The night I lost control was marked by a deafening silence. I was at home, surrounded by people I loved, yet I felt completely isolated. Conversations flowed around me, laughter echoed, but inside there was a turmoil. What had begun as mere discomfort transformed into a growing pressure, as if something was about to explode. A small comment, an apparently harmless joke, acted as the trigger. That trivial moment sparked a memory tucked away in some corner of my mind. The pain of the past, unspoken frustrations all surged back in an overwhelming rush. The smile that had been on my face vanished, and tears started to well up without warning. It felt as if a dam had burst. The people around me didn't understand. Some tried to comfort me while others looked confused. Their lost gazes reflected what I was feeling. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't articulate the words. Emotions piled up, and I didn't know how to cope with them. I was trapped in a cycle of sadness and anger, unable to find a way out. In that moment, I realized there was an emotional iceberg. Above the surface, only a small tip of pain, but below, a vast ocean of repressed feelings, fear, insecurity, regret. The little things in everyday life became unbearable, and I was suffocating under the weight of what I had ignored for so long. The night wore on, and the internal chaos became visible. The tears wouldn't stop, and I was exposed, vulnerable. The feeling of losing control was terrifying, but at the same time there was a strange freedom in finally letting the emotions flow. It was as if I had been carrying a heavy burden for too long, and now, by releasing everything, I was freeing parts of myself that had been dormant. What I didn't know that night was that this emotional collapse, while painful, was a vital step toward healing. By confronting what had been repressed, I began to understand the depth of my pain. This experience forced me to look at my life with new awareness, realizing that excessive control was not the solution. Vulnerability, despite being frightening, was an invitation for growth. Events like this can seem like a disaster, but they reveal what is hidden beneath the surface. Every tear that falls, every emotion felt, brings with it the possibility of transformation. As you confront the emotional iceberg, you realize that behind despair lies the opportunity for reconstruction. Ultimately, that night became a turning point, not just due to the collapse itself, but because of the understanding that followed. I learned that losing control is not the end, but a beginning, an invitation to explore what truly matters, to allow oneself to feel everything, even if it is painful. Each of us carries an iceberg. It's time to dive in and discover what truly lies in the depths. The next morning, I woke up with the sense that something had changed inside me. The previous night still weighed on my mind, but there was a lightness that wasn't there before. Looking in the mirror, I saw a face marked by tears, but there was also a determination. I knew I needed to do something about the pain that had emerged. The first task was to face the reality of what had happened. Instead of avoiding conversations about the previous night, I opted to address them. I was honest with the friends who were present. "I'm sorry for my collapse. It wasn't just a joke. There was so much more going on with me." Reactions varied, but most responded with understanding. This honesty brought me an unexpected relief, as if I were finally sharing a burden I had been carrying alone. As the days went by, I decided it was time to seek professional help. The idea of going to a therapist made me nervous, but there was also a small voice inside me that said it was the right step. When I scheduled the appointment, I felt a mix of anxiety and hope. Therapy wasn't a magic solution, but it was a safe space to explore my emotions without fear of judgment. In those sessions, I began to understand the complexity of my feelings. The therapist helped me map out the experiences that led me to suppress so many emotions. Each session felt like opening a new chapter of my story. I was confronted with memories I preferred to forget, but as I revisited those moments, I realized they were not just painful reminders. They were parts of my identity. As days turned into weeks, I started to notice subtle changes in my perspective. The small interactions that once seemed insignificant began to carry new meaning. A simple, "How are you?" from a colleague now held an emotional weight I hadn't recognized before. I started to value empathy in conversations, both what I received and what I offered. Besides the therapy sessions, I decided to implement small self-care practices in my life. I began to meditate, even if it was just for 5 minutes a day. At first, it was a challenge to sit in silence with my own thoughts, but gradually I learned to observe the emotions that arose without letting them overpower me. This practice taught me to breathe and pause before reacting, something I hadn't done before. Writing also became a form of therapy. I started keeping a journal where I recorded not only the events of my day, but also the emotions associated with them. Writing about the experience of the night I lost control became a cathartic exercise. By putting everything I had felt down on paper, I began to demystify my emotions, making them more manageable. Conversations with friends became deeper. I started to open up about insecurities I had previously kept secret. What used to be a superficial exchange of stories transformed into meaningful dialogues. I discovered that many shared their own emotional struggles, creating a space for mutual vulnerability. Each conversation made me feel less isolated and more connected. Over time, I realized that pain wasn't an enemy to be avoided, but rather an aspect of life that could be integrated into my experience. I learned that the highs and lows are part of human growth. Sadness wasn't a sign of weakness, but a natural manifestation of life's complexities. This understanding allowed me to embrace difficult feelings with more compassion. Social life also gained new meaning. I began to participate in support groups where people shared similar experiences. Hearing other people's stories made me realize that I wasn't alone on this journey. Each account of struggle and triumph served as a reminder that vulnerability is a strength, not a weakness. As I allowed myself to feel and express emotions, I noticed that the internal pressure began to ease. The anger that had been building up started to dissipate, becoming a force I could channel into constructive actions. I began to engage in activities that brought me joy, such as painting and hiking in nature. These experiences became an antidote to the sadness that once felt so oppressive. My relationship with my family also began to transform. When I opened up the dialogue about my emotions, I realized that they also had their own barriers and silences. We started having more honest conversations, creating a safe space for everyone to express themselves. This change brought a new dynamic, where mutual support became a priority. Over time, the night I lost control became a turning point, not just of pain, but of rebirth. It was a reminder that vulnerability is an integral part of the human condition. I learned not to fear emotional storms, but to recognize them as opportunities for growth. Today, when I look back, I see that collapse was a catalyst. It forced me to confront the truth of my existence and seek authenticity. Every tear I cried that night was not just pain, but a step toward liberation. The excessive control I sought was an illusion. True strength lies in allowing oneself to feel and be human. And so, I continue to navigate the emotional waters of life, more aware and resilient. The journey that followed that night of emotional collapse was challenging, but filled with learning. Each day presented itself as a new opportunity to explore and confront the emotions I had previously avoided. I knew I needed a plan. The first thing I did was establish a routine. This structure brought a sense of security, something I realized was essential for me. Waking up early and setting a schedule for daily activities started to give me a sense of purpose. I began to exercise regularly. Physical activity not only released endorphins that improved my mood, but also helped me process the feelings that were coming to the surface. Every run became a form of release, where I could think without distractions, allowing emotions to flow naturally. In addition to exercise, healthy eating became a priority. In the past, I used to eat recklessly, often in response to stress. Now, I've started preparing nutritious meals, which has not only improved my physical well-being, but also my mental health. The act of cooking has become a form of self-care, where I can focus on the present and take care of myself. Meditation, which once seemed intimidating, has become a pillar of my routine. I set aside time every day to sit in silence and observe my breathing. In the early days, my mind felt like a whirlwind of thoughts. However, with practice, I learned to accept these thoughts without judgment and let them pass. This taught me not to cling to negative emotions, but to recognize them as part of who I am. During therapy sessions, I continued to explore the roots of my pain. I discovered that many of the feelings I experienced were linked to childhood experiences and past relationships. My therapist helped me understand that these traumas did not define who I was, but were important parts of my story. Learning to separate my identity from my experiences was a crucial step toward healing. As I began to share these discoveries with friends and family, I realized that honesty was a powerful tool. Deep conversations became more frequent, and the vulnerability that once felt terrifying became liberating. Each time I spoke about my struggles, I felt the chains of isolation start to loosen. One of the most impactful conversations was with a longtime friend. He revealed that he too had faced his own emotional demons, something I had never imagined. This not only strengthened our friendship, but also made me realize that we all face internal battles. This exchange helped me understand that vulnerability is not a weakness, but a bridge that connects people. Over time, I started getting involved in volunteer activities. This experience not only allowed me to help others, but also brought new meaning to my life. Each person I met, every story I heard, reminded me of the complexity of the human condition. It helped me put my own difficulties in perspective and appreciate the small victories of everyday life. Additionally, reading became a renewed passion. I began to explore books about emotions, self-help, and inspiring stories. Each page I turned felt like a conversation with a wise friend, offering new perspectives and insights. Literature became a safe space for me to reflect on my experiences and learn from others. My writing practice also evolved. I started writing letters to myself, expressing my feelings and reflections. These letters became an emotional diary where I could document not only my struggles but also my progress. Months later, when I read those letters, I realized how much I had grown and how my perspective had changed. Self-care, which once seemed selfish, became a priority. I learned that taking care of myself not only benefited my mental health, but also made me a better person for others. I set aside moments to do things that brought me joy, like watching movies, going for walks, or simply relaxing at home with a good book. Family relationships also went through a significant transformation. We started gathering for weekly dinners, where we not only shared meals but also opened up about our lives. These meetings have become moments of genuine connection, where each of us could express ourselves without fear of judgment. Open communication has become the foundation of our relationship, bringing a new level of understanding among us all. As I delved deeper into my journey of self-discovery, I realized that pain was not something to be feared. Instead, I learned to embrace each emotion, recognizing them as signs that I was alive and growing. This shift in mindset helped me see life with more clarity and empathy. Today, looking back, I realize that that night of breakdown was, in fact, a new beginning. The vulnerability I experienced at that moment led me down a path of self-knowledge and healing. The pain that once felt unbearable transformed into a source of strength, driving me to seek a more authentic and meaningful life. Life continues to present its challenges, but now, instead of avoiding difficult emotions, I confront them head-on. Every tear, every smile, every moment of joy or sadness becomes an integral part of my journey. I have learned that by embracing the entirety of the human experience, I allow myself to live fully, with all its nuances. The control I so desperately desired was not the answer. True freedom lies in acceptance and acknowledgement of emotions. Now, more than ever, I am willing to dive into the depths I once feared, knowing that it is there that the true richness of the human experience resides. The journey of self-discovery that I began after that night of emotional breakdown has deepened even further. Therapy has become a vital space where I could explore not only the emotions that emerged, but also the practices that could help me cope with them. The therapist, with her welcoming approach, challenged me to examine the situations that caused me discomfort. Each session was an invitation to confront parts of myself that I had avoided. I reflected on the relationships I had and how they influenced my emotional state. Often I realized that I surrounded myself with people who didn't fully understand me or who weren't willing to share their own vulnerabilities. This realization was painful but necessary. I needed a support circle that was genuine and understanding. So I decided to seek out new connections. I started attending support groups and workshops on mental health. These gatherings provided me with the opportunity to meet people who were experiencing similar situations. Each story shared was a reminder that pain is a common part of the human experience. The empathy that blossomed in these environments helped me understand that I wasn't alone on this journey. Over time, my social interactions became more authentic. I learned to be more open about my feelings and to invite others to do the same. Each conversation turned into an opportunity for true connection. The vulnerability that once seemed daunting was now a bridge that brought me closer to others. I allowed myself to listen and be heard, creating a space where emotions could be expressed without fear. Moreover, the practice of meditation became a powerful ally. During the sessions, I learned to observe my thoughts and feelings without being overwhelmed by them. This practice not only brought a sense of calm, but also helped me develop a deeper awareness of myself. I started to notice thought patterns that had previously gone unnoticed, allowing me to intervene before my emotions became overwhelming. Meditation taught me the art of acceptance. Instead of fighting against negative emotions, I began to accept them as part of my being. This shift in mindset was liberating. Instead of feeling that I had to hide my sadness or anger, I learned to express them in a healthy way. This new approach allowed me to find constructive ways to deal with my feelings, rather than suppressing or ignoring them. Keeping a journal remained an important part of this journey. It was a space where I could scribble down my innermost thoughts and the emotions that arose throughout the day. By writing, I organized my feelings, making it easier to understand and reflect on them. This practice became a form of self-discovery, where I could revisit my experiences and recognize how much I had evolved over time. One day, while rereading some old entries, I noticed how my perspective had changed. What once was a narrative of pain and confusion was now read with newfound clarity. The transformation I had undergone was not just a response to emotional collapse, but a continuous process of growth. Each tear, each moment of vulnerability, had contributed to building a stronger and more self-aware version of myself. With the journey ongoing, I began to engage more actively in my community. Volunteering became a way to express my gratitude for everything I had learned. Helping others not only gave me a sense of purpose, but also connected me with people from different backgrounds and stories. Each interaction was an opportunity to see life from new perspectives. The practice of volunteering taught me that, while we face our own battles, everyone has their struggles. This understanding deepened my empathy and compassion, not just for myself, but for others. Each shared smile, each word of support exchanged, reinforced the idea that human connection is one of the fundamental pillars of healing. In this process, my relationship with my family also began to transform. We created a safe space for open conversations where everyone could express themselves without fear of judgment. This change brought relief and understanding, allowing each of us to share our emotions and challenges. Over time, these conversations became a ritual, a moment of unity and mutual support. The practice of self-care now became an integral part of my routine. I set aside time for activities that brought me joy and satisfaction. Nature walks, reading, or simply moments of silence became essential for my well-being. Self-care was no longer seen as a luxury, but as a vital necessity. I learned that taking care of myself was, in fact, an act of love. As the months went by, the sense of lightness that emerged after that night of emotional collapse solidified. The pain didn't disappear completely, but I learned to dance with it. Instead of running away, I welcomed it as part of my journey. This new approach brought an inner peace that I had never experienced before. Today, as I look back, I realize that night of losing control was a turning point. Not only because it forced me to confront what had been repressed, but because it led me down a path of self-discovery and renewal. Vulnerability, which once seemed like a weakness, is now a source of strength. Life continues to present challenges, but now I am more prepared to face them. Each emotion, whether joy or sadness, is a reminder that I am alive and constantly evolving. The journey of self-discovery is ongoing, and I am willing to dive even deeper, exploring every part of myself without fear of what I might find. Thus, I move forward, more aware, more resilient, and more open to the experiences that life has to offer. With each new day, the practice of being present has become a priority. I've started to appreciate the small moments, the ones that used to go unnoticed. Conversations with strangers, shared smiles, and even the simple act of enjoying a cup of coffee have become opportunities for connection. Instead of merely existing, I've begun to live with more intention. Meditation has solidified its place in my routine, not just as a technique to calm the mind, but as a way to reconnect with my body and feelings. With each session, I've learned to sit with emotional discomfort, to accept anxiety and sadness without rushing to push them away. This practice has taught me that emotions don't have to be a chain to be broken, but rather part of a current that flows. Over time, I realized that the vulnerability that once terrified me is now a source of connection. I began to share my experiences more openly with friends and in support groups. In doing so, I noticed that many were going through similar struggles. These honest exchanges not only eased the emotional weight, but also created deeper bonds. Through volunteering, I discovered a new passion. Working with people facing challenges made me realize human resilience in a surprising way. Every story I heard was a testament to strength and perseverance. This connection with others has helped me understand that pain is a shared experience, part of the fabric of life. I also decided to engage in projects that promote mental health in my community. This gave me a sense of purpose that I didn't realize was missing. Organizing events, participating in discussions, and creating spaces for others to express themselves became ways to channel my learning and growth. Reading became a refuge for me. I found comfort in books that focused on personal development, empathy, and most importantly, the stories of others who also faced their emotional battles. Each page I turned was a reminder that I am not the only one navigating through turbulent waters. These stories inspired me to continue my journey and not give up in the face of challenges. Self-care, which once seemed like a distant concept, was now an integral part of my routine. I learned that taking care of myself was not selfish, but a necessity. I set aside time for activities that brought me joy, like painting, gardening, and walking outdoors. These practices not only improved my physical well-being, but also helped me process my emotions in a healthier way. Writing, especially in the form of letters to myself, became a powerful means of reflection. By recording my thoughts and feelings, I began to see patterns that had previously been hidden. This allowed me to identify triggers and automatic reactions that needed to be addressed. Each letter became a dialogue with myself, where I could explore my concerns, fears, and hopes. Conversations with my family also transformed. We created a space where everyone could open up about their feelings without fear of judgment. This change brought a new level of connection between us. We began holding weekly family meetings, where we not only shared meals but also supported each other in our struggles and achievements. These interactions strengthened our bonds and fostered a sense of mutual support. As time passed, I realized that my relationship with emotions had changed. Instead of fearing them, I learned to see them as allies. Every emotion, even the most challenging ones, became a sign that I am alive and evolving. Sadness was no longer something to be avoided, but an opportunity for reflection and growth. I began participating in activities that promoted mental health within the community. I organized workshops and lectures where I openly discussed my experiences and the challenges I faced. These spaces became invaluable, allowing others to share their stories and feel supported. Yoga classes became a new passion for me. The movement helped me reconnect with my body in ways I hadn't expected. As I moved, I realized how emotions manifest physically. I learned to release built-up tension, allowing energy to flow more naturally. This practice brought me a new awareness of my body and my emotions. Healthy eating became a reflection of my commitment to self-care. I learned to cook nutritious meals that not only nourished my body, but also my mind. Cooking became a moment of meditation, where I could be present and focused on preparing something that would be good for me. Continuous learning became a fundamental pillar in my life. I started attending courses on emotional intelligence, nonviolent communication, and self-compassion. These classes helped me understand emotional dynamics better and develop skills that allowed me to interact more healthily with others. Therapy, which was once a source of anxiety, became a sacred space where I could explore my emotions without judgment. Each session was an opportunity to revisit the experiences that shaped who I am. I learned to be kind to myself, to recognize that growth is a process that takes time and patience. My social life became a priority. Instead of avoiding interactions, I started seeking genuine connections. I went to events, parties, and meetups, not just to socialize, but to allow myself to feel the joy of others' company. The empathy I developed helped me to be more present in conversations, to listen, and to connect in a more authentic way. The journey of self-discovery continues. Each day is a new opportunity to explore, learn, and grow. What once felt like a burden is now a source of energy. The pain and vulnerability, which were once seen as weaknesses, have become catalysts for transformation. Today, looking back, I see that the night I lost control was not an end but a beginning. a beginning of a path that has led me to a place of acceptance and self-discovery. The vulnerability I experienced that night is now a source of strength, and the journey of self-discovery continues to teach me about the beauty of being human. I am more open to the experiences life has to offer. I have learned to dance with the ups and downs, to accept every emotion as a part of my being, and so I move forward, more aware, more resilient, and more willing to explore the depths of the human experience. With each new day, the practice of gratitude has become an essential part of my routine. I started noting down the little things that made me happy, like the smell of coffee in the morning or the smile of a stranger on the street. These simple observations have helped me find joy in the small things in life that used to go unnoticed. Gratitude has not only improved my mood, but also provided me with a new perspective on daily challenges. Additionally, I have learned the importance of setting healthy boundaries in my relationships. I realized that I didn't need to please everyone all the time. This understanding allowed me to prioritize interactions that really mattered and to distance myself from toxic situations. By setting boundaries, I created space for meaningful relationships to flourish, where I could be authentic and vulnerable without fear of judgment. The practice of nonviolent communication, which I learned in one of the courses I attended, became a valuable tool. I learned to express my needs and feelings clearly and respectfully, without resorting to guilt or resentment. This not only improved my communication skills, but also strengthened my interpersonal relationships. Honesty in conversations fostered an environment of trust, where everyone felt comfortable opening up and sharing. Over time, self-awareness became a skill I valued. I became more attuned to my emotional triggers and the reactions those emotions provoked. This awareness allowed me to intervene before sadness or anger became overwhelming. Instead of being swept away by the emotional tide, I learned to breathe and center myself. This practice of pausing, even if only for a moment, became a time for reflection that helped me act more consciously. Self-care also expanded to include activities that promoted my mental and emotional well-being. I discovered the power of art as a form of expression. I started painting and drawing, even if just as a hobby. The act of creating something allowed me to channel emotions and thoughts, providing a healthy outlet for what I was feeling. These artistic activities not only helped me process my feelings, but they also became a form of meditation where I could lose myself in the present moment. My connection to nature deepened. I started taking walks in parks and trails near my home, allowing the beauty around me to connect me even more with the present moment. Nature became a refuge where I could feel at peace, away from everyday distractions. As I walked, I reflected on the lessons I had learned and how they shaped my new outlook on life. Getting involved in support groups and mental health communities was also a crucial part of my journey. Meeting people who faced similar struggles created a sense of belonging. Each shared story reinforced the notion that we were not alone in our battles. This support network gave me strength and reminded me that vulnerability is a shared human trait, not a sign of weakness. Participating in events and workshops on mental health became a way to strengthen this network. Listening to talks from people who had gone through similar experiences inspired and validated me. These interactions not only broadened my understanding of mental health, but also motivated me to keep seeking growth and learning. Writing, which had once been a form of venting, evolved into a more structured channel of communication. I began writing articles and sharing my experiences on blogs and social media. The act of writing not only helped me process my emotions, but also allowed me to support others on their journeys. The positive feedback I received from people who related to what I had written made me realize the importance of sharing stories. These virtual interactions became a new space for connection. Seeing that my vulnerability could resonate with others made me feel part of something bigger. The empathy that flourished in this virtual environment was a constant reminder that we all struggle with our internal battles, and that open communication can be transformative. My relationship with my family also continued to develop. Family gatherings have become moments of strengthening bonds, where we could all share our struggles and celebrate our achievements. We created an environment where communication was valued and where everyone felt safe to express themselves. This change brought about a new family dynamic, where mutual support became the norm. Over time, I realized that learning never ends. Life is filled with new challenges and opportunities for growth. With each experience, I became more aware that vulnerability is not a state to be avoided, but an invitation to authenticity. The journey of self-discovery is not linear, and each step, whether small or large, is an opportunity to explore more deeply who I am. Accepting my emotions has become a vital aspect of my life. I learned not to judge myself for feeling sadness or anger, but to understand that these emotions are part of the human experience. This acceptance does not mean resignation, but rather a recognition that all emotions have their place and value. I learned to embrace both tears and smiles as interconnected parts of my journey. Today, as I look to the future, I see a horizon filled with possibilities. The journey I began that night of emotional collapse has transformed into a continuous quest for self-awareness and acceptance. I am more willing to face challenges, seek genuine connections, and live authentically. Each day is a new chance to learn, grow, and love myself and others. And so I move forward, more aware, more resilient, and more open to the experiences that life has to offer. Every emotion, every interaction, every moment lived is a step toward a more meaningful life. I am ready to embrace what lies ahead, knowing that vulnerability is a strength, not a weakness. The journey of self-discovery that followed that night of emotional collapse taught me the importance of consistency. Every small change I implemented in my daily life began to accumulate a significant impact. The routine I established was not just a way to keep myself busy, but a means to create stability and security amid the internal chaos. Over time, I realized that discipline became an ally. Waking up early and dedicating time to myself, whether through meditation, writing, or exercising, helped me start the day with a positive mindset. This moment of self-care transformed into a sacred ritual that I yearned for. The regularity of these practices not only improved my emotional well-being, but also my physical health. Meditation, in particular, became a powerful tool. Over the weeks, I learned to sit in silence and focus on my breath. This practice allowed me to calm my mind and observe my thoughts without getting carried away by them. Consequently, difficult emotions began to lose their intensity. Instead of feeling overwhelmed, I started to accept that it was normal to have bad days, but they did not define my entirety. In moments when sadness or anxiety returned, I already knew how to cope. Through the practice of self-observation, I could quickly recognize when emotions were building up. This allowed me to take action before the situation became unsustainable. Talking with friends or writing in my journal became part of my coping strategy. These methods not only served as escape valves, but also helped me organize my thoughts and feelings. Writing, in particular, became a reflection of my evolution. As I recorded my experiences, I realized how I was growing and learning to navigate life better. The search for genuine connection has also intensified. I began participating in discussion groups and community activities. These interactions not only fueled my desire for belonging, but also challenged me to step out of my comfort zone. Hearing the stories of others made me realize that, while our experiences are unique, pain and struggle are universal. These exchanges became fundamental to my healing. The vulnerability I had started to accept in myself was now expanding into my relationships. Conversations with friends became deeper and more meaningful. This created a safe space where everyone could share their struggles, fears, and victories. Over time, I also began to better understand the role of empathy in my life. I learned that we should not only listen to others, but also validate their experiences. This understanding made me more present in conversations, allowing others to feel seen and heard. Moreover, the practice of asking open and genuine questions became a valuable skill. Instead of simply asking, "How are you?" I began to take a true interest in the stories behind the answers. This not only improved my relationships, but also provided me with a broader perspective of the world. Therapy continued to be an important anchor. Each session turned into a space for exploration and discovery. My therapist helped me identify behavioral patterns I hadn't recognized. These patterns were often reflections of past experiences that shaped my worldview. With this new understanding, I began working on reprogramming these patterns. I learned to recognize situations where I reacted automatically and to pause and reflect before acting. That pause became crucial in my life, allowing me to respond more consciously and intentionally. Self-care, which initially felt like a task, has transformed into a priority that I truly value. I began to explore new ways to take care of myself, such as yoga classes and creative hobbies. Painting and gardening became forms of expression I didn't know I needed. These activities not only became sources of joy, but also helped me process my emotions in a healthier way. My connection with nature, for instance, brought me a sense of peace I hadn't experienced before. Every outdoor stroll turned into an opportunity for reflection and rejuvenation. As life progressed, I realized that the path of self-discovery is ongoing. The lessons learned over the months better prepared me to face future challenges. The resilience I developed allowed me to embrace uncertainty with more confidence. I knew I was better equipped to handle life's adversities. The relationships I built became fundamental to my healing process. The support network I created, made up of friends, family, and colleagues, provided me with an environment of love and understanding. This connection reminded me that I am not alone on my journey. Now, as I look to the future, I feel a mix of excitement and anticipation. Life continues to be a constant learning experience, and I'm more open to discovering what comes next. Every experience is an opportunity to grow and evolve, and I'm determined to live each moment fully. Before you leave, do two things now. Take a deep breath and hold on to what touched your heart today. And if it makes sense, share this story with someone who needs to hear it too.